We're live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the sixth talk in Revolve series, Conversations with Artists. My name is Laura Bivolaru, and I will be joined tonight by two amazing artists and writers, Eugénie Shinkle and Callum Beaney from C4 Journal. And we will be talking about photo books and writing on photography. So without any further ado, I will invite Eugénie and Callum now. Hello.
Hi. Hello.
Can you hear me? Everything good?
Can we turn that on? Let's turn up as much as it will go. Maybe reset because it's a different kind of thing. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Okay, excellent. My ears are a bit rubbish. Okay. How's that?
It's so good to see you.
You too. You too. Hi.
So for people joining us now, this evening I will be talking to Eugénie Shinkle and Callum Beaney of C4 Journal. Eugénie is an artist, writer and reader in photography at University of Westminster's School of Media, Arts and Design in London. She writes in various formats, from books to academic journals, and on a variety of subjects, from fashion photography, landscape photography, vision machines, and image-making technologies. And Callum is a photographer and writer based in Suffolk. He has a background working in cultural heritage and enjoys studying languages, and so often writes about work relating to East Asia's histories. Together, they started C4 Journal, a platform dedicated to writing about photography and the use of the book form as a way of presenting it. So, icebreaker question while more people join us. What's a photo book that completely changed or challenged your understanding of photography up to the moment that you found this book?
Which one first?
You can go first.
Okay. For me, there's been a few, but I think Charles Fox's Buried is one which really caught me out. That's the book about a Cambodian family who fled the Khmer Rouge, which was a communist period in the 1960s. A government which essentially killed everyone who had money. That book, the family, documents that family's escape, eventually ending up in America. And it's not really an anthropological document. It's not really a diary, because it has family pictures with notes underneath. It's not really some kind of academic study. At the same time, it's not some kind of like arty family project, as it were. Not to do those down, it's just, it doesn't really sit in any one place. Mm-hmm. And it kind of does better than every other kind of approach because of that. It's so about this family and their pictures and the importance of memory and trauma to them, and the importance of this history and Charles's relationship with them, his friendship with one of the members of the family in particular, that Vera, that yeah, it really moved me. It's an incredibly wonderful book, and it has no pretensions, or like it doesn't really try to be anything but about what it is.
Interesting, thank you.
Just let us know if it gets too noisy, because we're actually in an art gallery at the moment, and there's a street right over there. So, for me, it wasn't actually a photo book that changed the way I think about photography. It was some things that are peripheral to what I do. Reading the philosophy, I know this sounds really pretentious, but it was quite like paradigm shifting for me. Reading Merleau-Ponty, who's a French phenomenologist. He's really difficult to read. And Brian Masumi, who is a Canadian, I'm not sure what you would call him even. He writes in that tradition, but reading their work completely changed the way that I think about our relationship with images. And in terms of images themselves, I mean, for me, it was the kind of work you see in science textbooks that got me really fascinated in our architectural volumes. There's a lot of books like that in my house growing up. And for me, those were really, really formative. So it was formed quite early and under different contexts. And so I was really struggling to think of a photo book that's changed the way I feel about photography, and I still can't come up with one. I'll let you know if I do.
So how did you two meet and come up with the idea of starting C4?
Stalked me on social media.
That's great.
I get loads of that. I'm going to get cancelled. No. So I have a bit of a research method. Like if I want to meet someone, I'm very thorough. I want to know exactly who they are, what they're interested in, and make sure I'm not walking in there. So I approached Eugénie and asked her if she would mind having a look at a book dummy I made. It was a bit rubbish. It was pictures of London and Nottingham. We talked a bit. She gave me some advice.
I didn't understand the book dummy at all.
No, because I wanted to do it, it wasn't what it was doing. And yeah, basically what happened was we kept on talking back and forth, and eventually we kind of broke the ice and started to build a friendship. We started writing.
What did we start doing first? I can't remember what it was we started doing first.
You
I
definitely
think
gave me
it was
advice.
you sending me, actually, yeah, no, we just started chatting back and forth on Instagram and stuff, and then I think what really broke the ice in the collaboration was Cal sending me another book dummy, which was actually this, which ended up becoming this. It was this really strange book dummy that he'd made by laying photocopies on a wooden table and creating spreads, like by putting two photocopies side by side and then taking a picture of them, and then photocopying those pages. So I had all of these really weird images, like wooden borders around them. And he sent me this thing and said, do you want to do something with this? And by something, I took that quite literally, and I messaged him, I said, can I actually cut it out?
Yeah. We should do something with that.
Do something with what?
Just those old pictures.
Those old pictures?
You know, the table ones.
I don't have them anymore.
Okay.
Anyway, it's somewhere. But yeah, no, that was what started. I started writing some very long, I thought he wanted me to write because most people want me to write, but I asked him if I could cut the book up. And he said, yeah, go ahead. And that culminated in this project, which is kind of like an ongoing thing. It has all sorts of outcomes. One iteration.
So it started like an artistic collaboration, and the writing came a bit later.
The writing came later, yeah.
I sent you a profoundly jumbled.
Oh my god! Yeah, he sent me to read, which had like 400 ideas in the first paragraph, and I was like, Cal, you really need to slow down a little bit.
Yeah.
It was a very jumbled piece of writing.
Yeah.
It was a really good piece of writing, but there was just way too much going on in it, and I was kind of struggling my way through editing this. But we were both writing for another platform, and we stopped, and then we decided that we wanted, I guess, just a bit more, when I say control, that sounds a bit sinister, but we just wanted to be freer to shape something ourselves, and to write in a way that we wanted to write, to kind of form a community, just to create something that had a different feel than most of the photo book platforms we were reading. I
mean, a lot of people who are watching this know what the industry is like. So we wanted to form a little bit of our own space. Rather than treating it like a networking thing, like a business network, we wanted to build our own network in a bit more of a collegial way.
And in a more organic way. We're not really concerned with the people whose books we write about, whether they're famous or renowned or not. Some of the people we interview, very few people have actually heard of.
Good work is good work.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so often that work doesn't get the attention it deserves, sometimes due to various prejudices and financial reasons and who knows who.
Or just because certain things end up getting, I mean, we've all seen this happen, certain things get really, really hyped. I mean, it doesn't mean they're not good, but other things get overlooked at the expense of things that get hyped.
And sometimes that hype as good as people expect it to be. Kind of like No Man's Sky, maybe. So that's a video game.
Yeah, I guess what C4 brought new. I mean, firstly, it proved that there is space for people to write about photography. It's not just, those websites that you already know, like 1,000 Words and American Suburb X, and there's space for people to express their view. And I mean, it's firstly the books that you write about. As you said, they're not like well-known artists necessarily, but also the contributors from C4 Journal, they're not necessarily experienced writers. And I think that's really nice, it really gives space to people. So I'm wondering, how do you approach writing? Is it something like the publisher or a self-publishing artist contacts you, or it's your own interest that kind of prompts a text?
I mean, it's always driven by interest. Sometimes a publisher or an individual will contact us. That's happened quite a few times. Other times, because we both do constant research. Well, you do excessive research, constant research. And we'll discover things and we'll get in touch with people and we'll say, do you want to do an interview or something? And at the moment, it's slightly a gift economy where it's like, okay, well, you're an under-known publisher. Do you want to do us a little bit of a deal on some books? And then we'll do an interview. I'm making it sound really transactional, and it's not. We have no financial model. So we have to look at ways of kind of exchanging skills, creating value in different ways. We really want to help promote, up-and-coming publishers. I mean, I'm doing an interview with someone next week where they're just lending me an artist's proof of a book they've just released, because I can't afford to buy it, and they don't, they can't. They're a small publisher; they can't afford to give me a copy for free, which I fully understand. So I'm just borrowing it.
You get that with, I mean, sometimes someone will make a very limited run of books, and if we like them, we still want to write about them, And it's not about selling them. These do help sell books, but our motive is to, identify a book that we find really interesting, and then start a conversation or contribute.
Find some way to make a conversation happen,
And I was just going to say, and like for example, Bivolaru, her book, there are 12 copies, I think. So she literally lent me the dummy, and then I do my thing with it, and then I send it back to her.
Yeah.
So we try to accommodate for the fact that if you are a photographer and you're trying to publish a book, that's a lot of money, and you might not get money back. So it's really important that it's not quid pro quo, as it were. Like it's got to be what works for people to help them.
Yeah. And I do buy stuff. I mean, it's gotten more difficult since Brexit because a lot of the times it's the postage that's a killer.
Yes.
We all know. But yeah, as Cal said, it's really, we have to be really inventive, particularly in working with smaller publishers. Larger publishers, it's no problem. It's part of their business model. They can accommodate the odd review copy. But with smaller publishers, it really is a challenge. And it's often why we'll end up, for instance, doing an interview rather than a book review, because they simply can't afford to send us for free a whole bunch of their books, and we completely understand that. So we look for other ways to engage.
Sometimes interviews can really produce some much more interesting
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
I mean, like, quite often something that I've worked on doing if I interview someone, I try to ask about their methodology rather than their work. because if you're going to talk to someone about something that they have put out, you may as well look at what you can't get, or you can't learn about otherwise, because often the way that someone approaches making work is more interesting than the work itself, and I mean that in a good way. The work is still great, but how a photographer thinks can it can be really exciting.
It's not always evident in a book.
No, it's often unsaid, and that has its own.
But the majority of the articles on C4 are now book reviews. Are you looking to expand this to other formats as well?
Slowly, yeah. I mean, we had long discussions of this when we were kind of planning C4, and we agreed that initially, at least, it made sense to keep things compact. So we had a remit that we kind of were in control of. It is starting to expand. I mean, you're talking to someone right now about an exhibition you're doing.
Very interesting. I mean, I guess the way to think about it is we started with the idea of establishing ourselves as focusing on photo books, because that's what we primarily like. We like the format. We think there's a lot of things to learn from it.
And the other thing, sorry to interrupt, but the other thing that we were really adamant about from the very beginning was that we wanted to focus on zines and ephemera as well.
Yeah.
There's nobody, or nobody was, I think people probably are now. But it was really, you had to look hard to find reviews of zines.
Photobook review on Instagram, he does.
Yeah.
I like him. He did one of George's. Sorry. I'm doing an exhibition thing. We've looked at various formats. Something I'm starting to do is interview people about books they publish. So it's more about their activities rather than about their works, any specific body of work. I'm reaching out a lot to sort of folks in Japan with that. Trying to, don't know, it's fine. Trying to broaden the remit a bit. At the moment, a lot of our readership are from the UK, and since we published a certain article, also from the US.
We have some in Japan and China.
Yeah, but I'm trying to open that up a little bit more. The way that art from China and Japan is perceived in Western contexts is usually very ideological, I'm going to say. So I'm interested in opening that up a little bit, and that's going beyond just looking at books.
And there's also other things in the works sort of behind the scenes that we can't really talk about, but opening up into photo book markets and contexts that are known, either very little known in Western, in Western discourse, or are known via a very select and small sort of group of individuals and books. So, as I said, we're really interested in finding out what's going on at a grassroots level in a lot of places. And it's a long process. I mean, we've still not, Africa in particular is a place that we're really, really interested in seeing what's going on, but for all sorts of obvious reasons, there isn't, the same kind of photo book, largely economic and infrastructural, there isn't the same kind of photo book scene there as there is here. And that leads into a whole bunch of other kind of related issues about Western standards of so-called quality, what you expect, what kind of a level of finish, the networks in which these are discussed, the context in which they're produced. So there's a really rich kind of, I've gone totally off topic.
No, it's okay, this is cool. I mean, I'll just say, sorry. Okay, I was just going to say, and the same applies for a lot of places. There are a lot of photographers working in India. There are a lot of people making zines and books.
We never see them.
It's very hard to find them on social media over here. I mean, we run into people occasionally. But the work, like I was talking about China somewhat obliquely there, the work that gets seen is often, it only really gets into the Western art market if it occupies a certain stereotype. For example, and I say this, Yamamoto Masao and Rinko Kawauchi are two of my favourite photographers, but I remember from around 2010 to 2010, there was this wave of fetishism about how mystical and ethereal the Japanese are, and it's all about Zen and nature, and there is so much more to that culture. and there are so many more other aspects to it that are very complex. So, you know, we're interested in discussions and work which is made on the terms of the culture from which it originates, rather than just seeing another gallery making another, you know, old Japan black and white by contrast. It looks like Daido. There are loads of Japanese photographers who don't know work like that. The same can be said for, you know, a lot of different countries and their own respective stereotypes we have about them here.
Yeah, I can totally understand that, because I'm from Romania, and you know, Romania is so close. It's in the European Union, and still it's very difficult to access photo books or artist books. It's very difficult for me to buy them from here. I always have to like ask my parents to buy them, and then they collect a few, and then they send them all to me in a bigger parcel. And at Offprint, for example, there is a Romanian publisher that usually comes. I think it's called Punch or something. So, you know, there's some degree of accessibility, but not a lot. And I think the language barrier sometimes is a real challenge. I'm wondering, Callum, how do you go about that?
Speak the language? I mean, I'm learning Mandarin and I speak Japanese. So that's kind of where I have my attention. You can speak French, a bit of German.
Yeah, French and a very tiny bit of German.
I mean, it's kind of the one side.
I mean, France and Germany, you know, the lingua franca in most European countries is English, or in many European countries, I don't want to say most. But yeah, I mean, it's a really difficult one, you know, breaking out of. On the other hand, it's photo books, so.
It's a niche market already, you know, but at the same time, I mean, the problem is you get like ambassadors of a given country, like, you know, some curator who gets their name out. But if they happen to be a little bit of a character, then, you know, that's still, you know, everything is filtered through, that you get gatekeeping and stuff.
But I mean, we haven't even been doing this for a year yet, so a lot of the barriers that we're encountering are ones that we didn't really, very naively, didn't really know existed until we got into it. You know, until we both started talking to people. I mean, I'm having conversations with someone in India, for instance, who's really brought me to realize how you think it was obvious, and if I had thought for a second, it probably would have been. But you know, photo books in India are an absolute luxury for 98% of the population. So again, what we see in the Western market coming from India is by and large made by, you know, middle class and upper middle class people who are living an entirely different life from most of the people in the country. So those sort of cultural barriers, you know, economic barriers, geographical ones, often political ones. I mean, I wonder if there is a photo book and a zine scene in North Korea. Probably not, but, you know, we don't know.
I mean, also, just to pick up on what you say about the financial thing, if you look at bookshops based in countries where the economies aren't as good or aren't doing as well, they still have to make a profit if they bring in a book from a major Western publisher. So you've got a book which costs more than someone might make in a week, relatively speaking. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you've got a £50 coming from America, I don't know, and you're selling that in Indonesia, well, the difference in how money scales, you know, it's like if you take £10, if I go over to Guangzhou and I bring a £10 worth of renminbi, that can get me about £20 worth of goods. The economies are different, and so what people can get and get access to, that's also a challenge. I mean, it's not a challenge we directly deal with, but it's part of this relationship where, you know, the art market has a very, very high class barrier and that and economies.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's something we all deal with in our own ways, but it's much more. The division is much more stark than we realise in many of many of the countries who are represented on the photo book scene, but you know, we don't really get the chance to dig down into what is actually going on the ground out there, and it's something we're really interested in.
I can see the perspectives of people who are actually living and working in a given place, because irrespective of, you know, this financial aspect and, you know, the various social issues the art world has, you know, if it's just like people who make tourist photo books, and again, some of those are very good, but if it's just that, I don't know, I just find myself thinking, you know, okay, but what about people who have a more like ingrained, like a deep, it's like me and like English, like I can, yeah, I'm waffling, sorry. just, you know, how do other cultures think of banter or something like that, something very English. If you hear about it from someone who isn't English, you're going to get a different view on it. Someone's comments, are there bookshops for everything? Photo books? I don't know.
Yeah, there are, and that's the thing, like, if you speak the language, you might able to go onto the publisher's website and find them there, but otherwise, really difficult to find them.
Yeah.
And with Brexit, to transport them now, as you said, Eugénie.
Well, it has had, I mean, there's an Indonesian publisher who does these amazing zines who I've been sort of talking about getting stuff, but with COVID, I think it's probably changed now, but I was trying to get some stuff sent over during COVID, and they said that because so many couriers have basically gone out of business, or were just not operating, that anyone who wanted to send stuff, they could charge what they wanted. And so, you know, the photo books were going to cost me something I could afford. The shipping was going to be cost 4 times that. So, yeah, for a kind of a global world, or a globalized world, it is actually really quite difficult to get things from A to B. You know, unless you've got tons of money to check the problem.
Same with Cambodia, actually.
Yeah.
Because I've been looking at that.
So, sorry, I think there's a little gap between us, so we might overlap from time to time. You are artists yourselves, and most of the contributors to C4 have an artistic practice. And I'm wondering, you know, are there any benefits for artists to write about other artists' works? What do you think about that?
Absolutely. I mean, from the perspective of writing about work, I think you have an insight into process and the importance of process that, you know, that someone who isn't involved in art making might not have. I was telling Cal before we started, I went to this seminar when I was in uni where it was like W.J.T. Mitchell, Rosalind Krauss, who were these like huge names in photographic criticism in Nerdland. Yeah. And it was clear that none of them, they were talking about photos as images, as though they were just these things that appear without any backstory, you know, without being in the dark room, or without, you know, hauling a giant camera up the side of a mountain, without any of that. So absolutely. And then from the opposite perspective, you know, it can really help you to understand your own process by writing about what somebody does. I mean, I just had a long conversation with Miranda Lichtenstein, who's a photographic artist working out of New York, and her process is incredible, just unpacking that with her. It was really enlightening about the ways that people work.
I mean, it's kind of the problem. I imagine some of the people watching are like students, or perhaps graduated, and you know, it's the same problem that Bart's had. Like, he didn't pay attention to the process of, you know, developing film and, you know, the act of taking a picture itself. So everything is locked into the photograph, which produces a very beautiful book with some very useful ideas. But you also end up with a very, I mean, it's ignorant, really. Like that act of taking a picture and then looking at a collection of pictures and then writing about it makes you really think about the process and what your intentions are. The same applies to other people. You have to look at the work, you have to identify what it is about. And you have to sort of mediate where you're coming from and where they're coming from.
The other thing is that photography now is such an enormously expanded field with so many possibilities in terms of reproduction. I mean, the piece we're sitting in front of is completely made of photocopies. You know, in terms of reproduction, in terms of workflow, in terms of the relationship between analog and digital and how you make your way through that. I find it very limiting to try and write about the image without really understanding what the process was. And again, as artists, I think we have probably, not necessarily in all cases, but probably a greater insight into the way that works and why you would make a certain decision. I mean, often people say, well, you know, why would you use a large format analog camera when you can get almost the same quality on digital? And it's really difficult to explain that to someone who hasn't used that camera, you know?
And you get that even from people who have a lot of experience. You know? My pa has rallied against using film cameras, but you know, okay, well, view cameras can be really useful and really give you a different way of looking at things. So,
I just love processing sheet film.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big part of it for me as well, actually. I love darkroom developing. You smell like happy, but, you know, developing, the fixer does that. You stink, that's offensive to me. And, you know, that act of seeing an image appear, taking pictures isn't just a logical thing. You know, it's not just digital camera snap. If you're approaching this in a more artistic way, you've got to remember that you're a person and that, you know, these decisions you make do actually influence how you end up with the end product. And that's something which other people might not be able to see, but if you're writing about someone's work, that's when you might understand exactly why this happened in this way.
Or you might understand why intuition has played a role, you know, why certain decisions were made that can't really be logically explained. And I don't mean to suggest that someone who isn't an artist can't recognize this as well, but certainly writing about work from the point of view of someone who knows how it's been made, I think, generally speaking, your insight it will certainly be more native to your way of thinking, for sure.
The biggest market for Photobooks is other photographers. Well, yeah, I mean, there was a bit of research briefly, but, you know, the point is, we are kind of making work for each other. You know, if someone has no knowledge of what's going on in photography, walks into here and looks at this, I mean, someone will probably find it really interesting, and I'm very happy. And I totally understand if they go, what's this about? We're very literal, you know, we kind of are trying to make some grand philosophical statement, but if you write about someone's work, you can start to understand your motivations, and you can really question, you know, how am I presenting myself to other people?
So it's a bit about, sorry,
I was just going to be aware, you might take for granted something that other people just don't get, but you take as completely natural.
So it's a bit about different ways of embodying, you know, someone else's practice might be different from the way you embody your own photographic practice.
I mean, embodying it is, I mean, it's really kind of a meaningful word for me, because this is a term that Merleau-Ponty, who so shaped the way I think about photography, that he uses, you know, and the idea there is that it's not just a kind of a rational, you know, writing about photographs isn't rational, it's not just rational, often it's completely not rational. And I find that as particularly in the last 5 years or so, with the growth of really abstract imagery that isn't really identifiably of anything.
It's about another.
And yet it still has this incredibly intense effect. You know, how do you write about that if you're just sort of logically looking at an image from the point of view of what it is what it represents?
Dusty Lakota is a good example of that, just as someone who a lot of people might know. You know, he makes these ethereal dream worlds, and you know, you can philosophize about the layering. You know, he repeatedly photographs his negatives in his pictures, and that is also very interesting and useful. And you can talk about lots of subjects like time and repetition and medium, But also, I mean, there's kind of like a Tumblr aesthetic vibe to it, like, and I mean that in a good way, because it's about getting a mood, it's about communicating a vibe. Oh my god. It's about just getting this impression you have of things out of people. And so I think maybe Photoland, or art in general, doesn't like to admit that a lot of this is very arbitrary and also very just feelings based. I'm sure some places better than others, but when you look at someone like Yokota, his grainy black and white pictures of the night, I mean, it's almost like some kind of movie still, or some kind of alternate universe that you're being transported into, and everything's grainy and it's half horror but half very soft and inviting. That's you really have to work to communicate that, in writing.
And so Revolve's followers are usually emerging artists, and I was thinking of them when I came up with this question. Writing is something quite paralyzing for many young artists. And from your experience, what are some tools that can make an artist a better writer?
I have some thoughts, because I mean, I for those who don't know, I teach photography. And there are a couple of things that I know really paralyze students when they're writing their artist statements. And I mean, writing about your own work is a really good place to start, because you know it, or presumably you know more about it than you do about anybody else's work. I think it's really a mistake to try and model your writing immediately on the writing of mature writers. Certainly it's a massive mistake to try and write academically using academic jargon unless you fully understand it and really know what you're working with. I mean, a common mistake that I see all the time is people using jargon because they think it makes them sound clever when they don't actually know what it means. And I would say that's not just students, that applies to a certain proportion of academics as well. I mean, I know in my own writing, there are a couple of things that really helped me move forward. One was like simplify, simplify, simplify. Take out unnecessary words, don't write in convoluted sentences. Try and strip your sentences down to the most simple thing you can use to express the ideas. Don't overload with adjectives. And this is the last one, a piece of advice by an American writer called Gore Vidal. And his advice is when you don't know what you think about something, describe, describe, describe.
Robert Adams wrote that as well.
Yeah.
He made the point, if you don't know how to explain what you're trying to talk about,
just describe it.
Yeah. Talk about the subject, because I mean, I really mirror what Eugénie is saying there, especially the academic side. There is a place for writing which involves a lot of technical terms, and there is a place for writing which is very poetic or challenging. Sometimes having writing that is deliberately difficult to figure out at a first read can be a very useful way to get people to think. But I've seen people name drop Derrida and Heidegger, and so and I've even asked them, did you actually read them? I said, no, I didn't. And it's like, don't do it. It's so alienating. Don't ever do it. Yeah. I think the other thing, try to keep everything within the bounds of the pictures. Don't try to talk about something that someone can't see, unless it's really important contextually. There are obviously exceptions. Try to drop your ego and try to focus on what the work is doing rather than what you want the work to do. Because that can be a real barrier. A lot of students, they have very good ideas and they make very good work. The work is good for reasons other than why they think it could be good.
I mean, the other thing to do, and this is something that we all do as photographers when we're learning, we copy the work of people we like. We hijack their style and we make it our own. And there's nothing wrong with doing that with writers who you like. You know, pay attention to what writers that you like are doing. You know, how are they using? They're using language creatively. You know, they're using it as a medium. The writers that I enjoy are ones whose writing has a particular rhythm, whose word choice is, you know, really well thought out, whose writing is just pleasurable to read. I think for a lot of people, writing is terrifying because they probably don't enjoy reading that much. And so it really helps to kind of identify and dig deep into a writer whose work you really enjoy, and whose work really helps you to understand what you're looking at.
Because it's there to provide a function. And you know, sometimes a piece of writing about a work can be part of the work. That's another useful thing. Think about it as a part of the work. It's not just the images. There's a very definite relationship. You know, it's not just press text or copy.
I'm trying to think of something I've read lately that I've really liked in terms of its writing. I read a lot that I love in terms of its ideas, but I read less where I'm really, really taken by the writing as well. There are plenty of people out there with amazing ideas, but the ability to express amazing ideas in really beautiful writing. I mean, for me, Roland Barthes does that better than anybody.
But he's also so dense.
Some of it's not that dense.
Oh, come on.
Oh, some for certain needs.
Yeah. But I mean, you know, and that's the thing, there's no one way. The way that Eugénie and I approach writing is very strict. Sometimes not always.
Strict. I mean, we both work really hard on our writing. We edit each other, and Andy, who also writes for us, he's part of the little editing circle as well. As you know, I edit many of the young writers, and you'll know if you'll talk to, I mean, Alexander, for instance, I'm really into combing the fluff out of prose, probably a little bit too much at some point. But I have no patience for prose that has too many adjectives and the sentences that do this. You know, I like a sentence to walk in a straight line from A to B, and that's very personal.
Yeah.
And yet I love parts.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. There are different ways to approach this. Sometimes, and that's what I said before, it's there to provide, it's there for a function. It's not there as a justification or an explanation necessarily. I know universities often present it like that, but maybe not your course, but like there are legitimate. Sorry, I'm trying to order my thoughts. One of my favourite photographers refuses to explain his intentions. You have a title and you have the content of the images. All of the meaning resides in the relationship between you, those images, and that title. And he says, I think photography is imagination. And basically, he literally thinks the whole point is to make the viewer do the work, not because he's lazy, but because that is his genuine philosophy about, you know, I know photographers who, let me just check my notes.
This is a long answer to the question.
Yeah, I know, I'm sorry. I know another photographer, he made some work about his experience being a half Indian heritage, half British heritage. And his exhibition statement, when I showed some work with him, was this is something like this for those who could understand or try to. It was something like that. And, you know, because if you look at it and you get it, and you can empathise with what they were trying to say, that is the bottom line. He doesn't need to explain himself. So there is that option sometimes.
I mean, the original question is just how not to be terrified from writing, and I think, you know, those three, if you condense all this down to three basic points. One is read, and pay attention to what you like when you read. Two is write, and, you know, and even if you hate what you write initially, because I always do. And three is just, you know, don't be really hard on yourself, and I need to take my own advice, because as anyone who has given me a book to review will know, I'm an incredibly slow writer, and it's because you know, you wouldn't know the results, but I labor over every.
You made a point about free writing earlier.
Free writing, yeah, that's really good. Some of my best ideas come from just free writing, just scribbling crap or just hammering it in the word processor and just let it come out. But anyways.
That's really good advice.
Yeah.
Okay, just before we finish, because you're in the gallery where your current exhibition is on the walls, do you want to say a few words about it, where it is, how long it's open for, so people can still visit it?
You can talk and I will point the phone around. I'm going to take the phone off its little tripod. And
Oh, we're getting a tour.
a little mini
A
tour.
little one.
So this is the piece that actually began our collaboration, or at least it's one iteration of it. Oh, there are questions. There are questions that we didn't even look at.
Should we do those at the end?
I think this is the end.
Yeah.
Okay, well we're going to do a walkthrough tomorrow, so this will just be a really quick one.
That would be via C4.
That'll be on C4. This is our big piece. These are all, this is what we were talking about in terms of, you know, process. These are just photocopies. I made these at work. I'm going to get fired now. And these are magnets. And these are just steel sheets. So it's all very temporary. These are Callum's books, which we'll talk a little bit more about tomorrow. We'll talk a lot more about tomorrow. This is Eva's work, which is just really elemental and simple and just so calm and beautiful. They're inkjet prints on newsprint of paper. And the texture of them is just amazing. And then there's more at the back. We'll go quickly through.
You can see this just here as well.
Yeah.
Like, something's doing nice. Is this
just the fold. Yeah, I realize this is quite meaningless for someone who's not standing in front of it. There's one of Koji's. I just want to say a little bit about this image. After I cut up Callum's maquette, I was producing these images just by literally layering bits of images on top of each other on a whiteboard and photographing them with my phone. And I made almost 800 of these, and this is the only one in the exhibition.
There's a lot more to come from this.
Yeah.
You know, we like the idea of taking the same collection of images and trying new things with it.
Yeah. That's a block.
Until it becomes
It's much quieter back here. We should have been back here.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
This is more of Eva's work. She's got this beautiful little plinth full of contact prints of the larger pieces. The larger ones on the wall are presented as grids, so there will be 9 shots, 9 individual images. These are the contact prints that eventually make it as larger 9-shot grids on the wall. And then she's got a piece in a frame. And this is when I was finishing making all the things that I was making out of Cal's images. I decided to kind of put an end to the process by creating things that could not be altered, because I'd literally just been layering pieces of paper on top of each other. And this piece is one of 4 I made just literally by taping them down. So they couldn't be used anymore. There are 4 of these. I'm going to get the 3 other ones. Oh, they're my fingers. Get the other 3 framed and show them at some point. And then before I framed it, I photographed it under the phase 1. So I got this super high-res image, and I made risograph prints from them. So if
you can take these, by the way.
If you come to, they're free because we don't like to sell things. These are free.
This whole exhibition is.
It can't really be bought. And this is Koji's work. Koji sent us 122 digital files, all of the same image, which is 3 dogs. And these are his original files. These are printed as he sent them to us, so we haven't altered the color in any way. He did all of that. And I also printed this at work. I'm for sure going to get fired now. But anyway, yeah, so that's the exhibition.
This looks really amazing. I think I have to come and see it in flesh.
Oh, well, we would love people to come and see it in the flesh.
It's open till June 27th,
Yeah.
and I'm going to be here till Sunday,
Yep.
and some of us invigilate on different days.
I'll be here tomorrow as well. Cal and I will both be here tomorrow.
Yeah, so if you just come around and want to have a chat,
Yep.
So for the people who are still with us, it's an offshoot gallery in North London, East
Yeah.
Finchley.
Yeah,
That's right.
East Finch. It's about maybe a 7-minute walk from the East Finchley Tube.
Are you on me or on you?
No, I'm on you.
Oh, okay.
I'm not selfieing.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll go back out.
Yeah. What else is there?
So
Okay.
yeah.
I think I did cover the questions because I kind of
did you? Okay, great.
rephrase them and make them work.
No, you don't need to book a visiting slot. It's quite a large space, so oh gosh, the acoustics are so much better back here. No,
We've got PPE.
yeah, we've got sanitizer and masks if you wanted, but it's quite a large space. I'm going to go back here because the acoustics are better. If you want to come, you don't have to book a slot. On the off chance, because I think it's legal to have up to 12 people in the space at once. Without before we have to form a queue.
And tomorrow you'll be doing an Insta Live from C4's account.
Yeah.
At what time?
That's at the same time as this one. It's at 6 o'clock.
Okay.
So we'll be going live with the three of us, not with Koji, unfortunately.
He's in Japan.
He's in Japan. And I don't think his English is that great either.
That's all right.
And he also doesn't really like to explain his work anyways. So
No, he kind of doesn't do that.
Yeah.
The fact we've got a press text is very unusual.
yeah. So it'll be Eva, Cal, and myself, and we'll be doing a little bit more comprehensive walkthrough.
Yeah.
Where we basically just talk about the processes that were used. Although I've gone through it really quickly, and I mean that really is it. It's just a bunch of photocopies.
Yeah. I mean, I will say, like, a big part of the show is kind of we're all kind of literal. The material is what the work is. You know, in Koji's case, you've got fur. The project's called Fur. You've got pictures of dogs that are furry, and he's changed the settings, and so the fur changes. And you know, there is a like photographic aspect to it, but it's very to the point. It's not about the nature of existence or anything.
No.
we like to think, you know, it's about having fun.
And I mean, the same goes for Cal and my work. I had started when he first sent me this maquette, writing this very theoretical thing about it. Ponce theoretical thing.
Merleau-Ponty.
No, Merleau-Ponty is great. Don't you
Ponce.
diss Merleau-Ponty.
Abstract French theoretical gibberish.
Don't listen to it. I've never read any of it. But I mean, it really quickly turned into something that was just about this really spontaneous act of making things. And it wasn't until we got quite a long way into the process that we realized, of course, that there was a lot of stuff that's already embedded in our heads. We're both obsessed with structure in different ways. Cal with linguistic structure and me with like physical structure, because my first degree is in engineering. And that's making its way into the work without us really having to force it. And we're just, while we were installing and talking about, especially installing the big piece in the front gallery, the way that ended up coming out, the way that we had no plan for that, it just turned out the way it did. That was when we really started thinking and talking about the different kinds of structure, the different ways that we articulate ideas around structure.
Yeah, I mean, with this stuff, for example, one of them, I mean, I don't know if you know a band called Meshuggah, but one of them is based around rhythm and making the way you see kind of jump up a bound. Yeah. And this comes from language study, and the whole idea is to represent spatial relationships in a written form. And I'm currently building literal structures with this writing system. So one day you'll see an exhibition where I have this stuff and then actual like buildings and stuff.
Yeah.
So that's the idea. The whole idea is, in this case, you know, you have images of blocks and then you treat them as building blocks. In many respects, it's that simple. Yep. You know,
but music came into it a lot for both of us.
Oh yeah, I mean, Eugénie and I like noise. I really like Vermeer and wall noise.
Yeah.
So literal, you know, all of these photocopy marks, these happened, so we include it.
These we were calling the drones because these I've got one of the pieces I built is called Sonic Youth Jim O'Rourke because I was listening to a collab between them when I made it. But yeah, no, we're both heavily influenced by noise and drone and
aggressive music.
I wouldn't say it's aggressive.
But yeah.
So it can be. It can be.
And I mean, I guess if we're talking about this briefly, so when you've got these shooting bits like this, here and a little bit here, when you've got against this like drone background, as we call it, it's also trying to get something slightly more 3D out of something that is completely flat.
2D, yeah.
Because, you know, it looks very different through a camera. We've tested this, a picture of it doesn't look how it feels to look in real life. But, you know, if you stand a bit further away, it's like it's an explosion or something.
Yep. I think there's only 5 minutes left.
Okay. Well, yeah, you know, that's,
anyway.
That's a fun part of it.
Yep.
It looks really great. I can't wait to see it in real life.
What's really cool is that, oh yeah, magnet towers, is that as over the course of the exhibition, the prints have kind of started to buckle and curl, especially the last few days as it's been so humid. So you don't have this perfect flatness anymore. You've got this really kind of lumpy texture, which is really quite cool. Part of our original plan was to bind these all up into zines, but we're not sure what we're going to do with them once we take them down. We will be doing a video of us uninstalling it. And then putting it in reverse, running it in reverse, so it will look like we've built the thing. Yeah.
That sounds really good.
Yeah, we hope it'll turn out. Anyway, yeah, that's it. So we would love to see people coming in. There's a cool bookshop across the street as well. Were there any other questions?
I don't think so.
Something to really consider. What to cover or a process to go through. God, we talked so much about that, I think. Are there photo books we can find Romanian photo books? Wow.
No.
Yeah. Oh, I have a question that I didn't get to ask you, which is,
sure.
What does C4 stand for?
Yeah.
Well, I'll just give you a little bit of context. We struggled like hell to come up with a name. Oh my God. Every time we found one we liked, we found that like there was a dry cleaner in Los Angeles that already had that name.
That's great.
Documents in our Google Drive.
Of names, or else it sounded really pretentious, or it was just, it was a struggle. And then Cal started doing translations of various Chinese and Japanese words.
Yeah. So like there's something called verb reduplication, which is like fei tang is very, and you can go fei tang, or you can go fei tang tang. And so like I thought, okay, copy. I've got the character for copy or reproduce. I just did 4. It's like no, because we're not just Japanese or Chinese.
But doesn't it mean, wasn't it a translation of photograph into Japanese or Chinese? Was like copy self or copy something?
Yeah, Shaxin, it's reproduce reality, you could say.
Yeah.
So we just thought copy. Whereas C4 is also the name of an explosive.
Which we did not know at the time.
But it's literally, copy, writing copy maybe. A big part of it, if we're frank, is it needs to be something that rolls off the tongue.
Yeah.
Did you see the new C4 article? That sounds a lot better than did you see the new Callum and Eugénie special
Prodigist discursive. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's very catchy.
We just kind of, what? Yeah, you can get prints. We know that.
Sorry.
They're on a trolley. This is my lo-fi plinth with little casters. It moves.
You pick up a print and you put it in a tube.
And there are other special tubes there. We're not going to, this is not a sales pitch.
No, sorry.
Shut up. Anyways. Did you have any other questions? I think we're almost out of time. And I have to go to a book launch.
Yes. I know. I won't keep you very long.
Of course. Yeah, no, I'll be picking up a book for you.
No, I think we went through all my questions, and of course this could have been a much longer discussion. I think we barely scratched the surface when it comes to photo books and writing about them.
Yeah, I mean that's a huge thing to get into. writing and photo books. And you know, I guess for me the main thing is that it's not easy. And I've heard more than one writer say this. You know, a lot of writers whose work I really respect say exactly the same thing, that writing about work is and always will be a bit of a struggle, and anyone who tells you it's not is fibbing.
I have seen some sort of people in the industry poo-poo people who commission writers, but I think this is a bit of an arrogant position as well, just to say some people really do struggle to talk about their work. Some people don't necessarily know what it is about their work that is so special.
I'm going to put this back on the stand now.
That's not their fault, or you know, that's not like a bad thing necessarily. It's just the issue for some people. Oh, okay, so yeah.
There we go.
Oh yeah. So yeah, you know. So sometimes just have a talk with writers as well.
Yes, and if there's anyone out there who's listening who's interested in developing their writing, I mean, it's not free for all. We don't take absolutely anyone, but you know,
do get in touch if you think there's a conversation to have.
Yeah.
We don't reply to everyone because we get a lot of emails, but we look at and discuss almost everything.
That's great. Thank you very much, Eugénie and Callum. This was absolutely amazing, more than I could have asked for. Very grateful for the great advice. And before I signed off, I just want to remind people that they can see all the Revolve conversations with artist talks on our IGTV and on our website. And the next one will be my colleague Victoria Doyle on the 1st of July, so in 2 weeks. Thanks again and have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for turning up.
Thanks.
I really enjoyed it, and thank you for inviting us.
My pleasure. Okay, bye.